One last sort of question then. What do you see SaaS companies failing? Why does marketing typically fail within these businesses?
That is a great point, a great question. I could dodge it and blame product, right, and say that the product wasn't compelling enough. But I think there's actually some truth in that, right? In that actually it's a holistic view you have to take. You can't really take the silo of it. It's rare for one function to fail in its own right. I think there's a kind of a collective success or failure, right? But I think some things to look at would have been touched on right at the start of this call, right? So I think you can try and be, all things to everybody, where you're really just not focused, and it's kind of, you ask who is your ideal customer profile, and it's horizontal. It's like every industry and every kind of persona possible. It's just lacking focus. So what you're doing is you're trying to broaden the market because you can't get enough leads in the sector that you're in, and all of a sudden your messaging isn't resonating anymore. So really I'd argue you got to be as narrow as you can initially, so really tightly narrow. You can always expand afterwards. So that's an area that I think is a cause of failure. I think, not validating that the pain exists, and kind of really, like one of my, more successful startups that I work with, the CEO basically burnt out 2 iPhones, right? He was on the phone so much, talking to prospects and listening, and sort of that disconnect can happen if you go back to the earlier conversation on marketing having to do so much. You can get very disconnected from the customer pretty early on, right? Because you got to fire up landing pages, and you got to fire up Google Ads, and you got to write content. And it just feels you don't have time to be spending it in the trenches talking to people. So that's the bit that I think is also key, that you can be very disconnected from the front line. So I'm always kind of a very strong advocate of sales and customer support, saying, guys, we need a strong feedback mechanism. We really need, so I've got, with most of my clients, if there's a Slack, which will often be used, I've got literally channels in there where sales put in, there's one channel to keywords, right? So what are the phrases people are using on calls? And every so often I'll get a keyword dropped in, and I'll research and go, okay, there's a pattern here. A lot of people are using this keyword. We were never really talking about this keyword on our website. Let's go and write some content on it. Or feature requests. What are the features that people are putting in when they're asking to use our service, and I feed that back to product. So I think that, operating in silos is one of the things, but also this sort of, you're all in it together. And I think that this kind of, particularly when we're all remote, you got to almost dial up the communication between the different elements, because, you're disconnected from the customer in these modern businesses, and that's a very dangerous place to be. So that's kind of my area. I think that there is often of falling down.
Well, I really like that answer, because in a way that's kind of the unglamorous foundation